We've been doing a series on generosity. As some of you guys know, we've gone over the source of our faith, foundation for our faith. We've gone over the effects of our generosity, the infinite possibilities that God can work with our generosity. And there was another one last week. I'm trying to remember. Oh, our bloodline, yeah. We talked about our responsibility as sons and daughters of God. And we had a great fourth one ready to go tonight. And I'm going to do something I'm never, ever supposed to do again. Some of y'all laughing. That we weren't supposed to play that song. That's my favorite song. That's why I play it so much. Is because even when I'm like, if I'm having one of those days and I go back and I'm like, yo, Brian, hit me up, dude. And then I sit there and cry like a little girl and stuff. The reason that that's my favorite song is that's the song I listen to on my way to meet with the detective. And some of you guys know about that. And recently, everything I gave you, Brian, is no longer this. My notes are gone. Okay, here we go. I got molested by an independent Baptist youth leader. And for several years. I didn't tell anybody. Because that was my identity. It couldn't become my identity, right? So, what male, it's incredibly confusing. You know, what male's going to go up and go, hey, guess what happened to me? Because in my brain, I'm saying, you know, I'm going, why me? What is it about me? What's wrong with me? Why, you know, and then that happened and happened for a while. Then I left the church and didn't tell anybody and went 14 years and got married and started a church and had a youth ministry. And then I knew there was something wrong with me. All right. And I'm just being brutally honest tonight. Are we all cool with that? We good? I can't do anything else. I love you guys. And, I was standing in the back there and people were staring at me and tripping out. People that know me and love me, they're like, what's going on? And I picked up this little Book of John thing that is supposed to go in backpacks. And I got notes. My notes tonight were written on a Hello Kitty piece of paper. I got 2 daughters, right? And they used my notebooks for coloring somewhere, and I couldn't find them. And I don't know, maybe we'll come back to this at some point. But tonight, I have funks. I have funks. I have days when I try, and maybe some of you know what I'm talking about. Like you feel like you're in a hole and you're trying to dig your way out of it, like mentally and emotionally. It's like, you know, it's like you're crawling to get out and you can't. And you feel like there's something wrong with you. And when I'm in those situations on Sunday, it's terrible. To quote the great Charles Barkley, it's terrible. It's terrible. Because y'all are going to come here and stare at me regardless of how I feel. Right? Think they're going to go, listen, generosity, hallelujah, right? And when I'm standing there going, I can't think. There's something going on. There's something wrong. And recently, I had to come face to face with a lot of that stuff, and I've kind of worked through some of this. Some of you guys know about me shutting the church down and kind of going into hiding and all this stuff. And you think you've dealt with stuff. Some of you have had painful things happen in your life, and you struggle with that identity, and you really hate yourself. Right? And there's things that maybe were out of your control. Maybe there's things that have happened to you that were in your control and mistakes that you made, but they haunt you, and they define you in your mind. And your life is the struggle to not identify yourself as the thing that you hate. So I'm having this discussion with my wife. Now, if you know anything about my relationship with my wife, you know that I like to have facial hair on my face. That was redundant. I also like to have arm hair on my arms. No, I like to have hair on my face. I like to have a beard. Now, I've never really thought about this any. I'm just being, y'all know I trust you and I love you. And all you people watching online, I don't know you, but be sweet, okay? So, I love to have a beard, right? Never really gotten into it much. I just know I like it. My wife hates it. Hates it. She doesn't like kissing me when I got a beard. She's like, oh, I like the way you look, but I don't like the way it feels. It's just not her thing. She hates it. Now, this has been like one of those, not like a big contentious thing in our relationship, but it's kind of like she hates it. You know, I love it, and then so I shave on her birthday and on our anniversary, right? That's our compromise. And I never really thought about it that much, right? Never really have. And some of you guys, you just grow a beard because you like the way you look. Your wife likes it, thinks you look manly. My wife thinks I look hairy, right? She just doesn't. It's not her thing. But for me, I'm like, okay, and I've never really, like, okay, and people think I'm transparent because I'll talk about what I think. The difference is, I talk about the way I think, but I don't talk about the way I feel. I'm one of those, like, I'm going to bottle it up, right? Because I don't want you to know how I feel about anything. And for a long time, imagine going 14 years, knowing this and having these fights and not wanting to look at yourself in the mirror for that long. And so now Jesus is going, deal with this, let me deal with this. And I'm going, I don't want to. Like, I really don't want to, right? And then I'm like, got to. Crap. Okay, we don't. Whatever. I'm kind of going nuts in my brain every once in a while. Now, I can tell you that my relationship with Jesus is strong, and this is what's so confusing about it. Is I love Jesus. There's nothing that I love more than people meeting Jesus. It's awesome. There's nothing I love more than being able to serve and love people like Jesus. It's incredible. You know when you do something just to help somebody, you get to serve somebody, and then you just get to go, that changed their life, and that was awesome. You know what I'm talking about. And how confusing is it to do that one day and be like, yes, and you're on top of the world, and then the next day you wake up and something is going on in your mind, something has happened to you at some point, and you're fighting it, and you hate yourself, and you can't figure out what's the difference in Thursday and Wednesday, because Wednesday was awesome. Wednesday was awesome, right? You're rocking King Jesus, and you're worshiping and you're praising and something, and then on Thursday, somebody says one little thing, and if you feel like you nosedive, and you're going, what the heck is wrong with me? I was a really good Christian yesterday, and now I'm terrible. I'm terrible. And it just makes it worse, right? Then what's wrong? What's going on? So, I'm having this conversation with my beautiful wife, and I was being a jerk, because that's what I do. When I go into my thing, I'm a jerk. Like, when I got here today, I walked from that door to that door. Some of you noticed. And then back to that door. Because I was afraid if I didn't go from door to door, some of y'all would want to talk to me. Right? How terrible is that? Right? Because I'm going, there's something. Okay, so I'm talking to my wife about this beard thing. And she was like, honey, it's the only thing that I want you to do. Well, I want you to do it. And I was so upset. Have you ever said something when you were really seriously upset and the filter was gone and you said it and it shocked you when you said it? Like you said something and you went, what? Right? And you said it. You say, like other people say stuff and you go, how in the world would they say that? Where did that come from? But when you say something, you're like, where did that come from? That's creepy. Right? Because you say it and then you're like, oh, I hate that that's true. And she asked me, she goes, honey, why don't you just shave? I love how beautiful you look when this is what she said. These are not my words. She goes, you're just so adorable when your face is shaved and I love it so much and it's so smooth. And I said, because when I shave, I look like I'm 14 and I don't ever want to feel like that again. And I went, crap. Because when I look in the mirror and my face is shaved, I see what I feel like. I feel like I look like I was the age when I was a victim. And I don't ever want to look or feel like a victim again. So when I shave, I don't look at myself in the mirror until the hair grows back. And I went, oh, man, I'm screwed up. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Because some of you come here and you're just like, okay, everything's good, God bless you, right? And then you leave, and on Monday, you're fighting with something. And Jesus is still Jesus. Sin is still sin. Grace is still grace. God is still awesome. But there is something wrong with you. And you go, yes, God, you've called me to something. You want to use me. Awesome. But there's that battle that wages inside of you. Romans 7. What I want to do, I don't do. And what I don't want to do, I do. Who can save me from this? And in my life, I see more and more, I see Jesus get more and more victory in my life. I see those days getting further and further apart. But I'm looking over this and I'm going, generosity. This is who God is. This is what He's called us to. These are the effects that our generosity can have. This is how we can change the world. And I know that. And it's fantastic. And the battle that I fight is I grew up in a church culture where you just, whatever you had to do, you better act like you had it all together. Suck it up, wear the right clothes. If you're the pastor, you do not sin. And I see the statistics of like 80 plus pastors that hate their job. And I'm like, why isn't one of them telling people this? I love my job. There is nothing I love more than screaming Jesus. There is nothing I love more than being part of this family. But sometimes I don't want to do this. Sometimes I want to stay at home in my bed, pull the covers over my head, and cry like a little girl and do a crossword puzzle. I actually don't do crossword puzzles, but I thought that sounded funny. Right? Like me, Netflix, and chocolate milk. And I'm like, hey, Jesus, not today. So I'm standing back here tonight, and I'm like, okay, not today. And we're driving here, and Whitney's like, are you okay? No. Why? I don't know. Today is one of those days that I feel like a victim. Today is one of those days that I feel like that kid that couldn't protect himself. Today is one of those days that I feel like there's something going on inside of me that I can't beat. It's one of those days. And I got to get up there and act like it's not one of those days. Because you don't need that. You don't need, you're like, we're going to go get filled up at church and get some encouragement to go back to our week. Right? And you leave. What happened? Josh was super depressing tonight. He was super depressing. Told us that terrible things are happening and he hates himself and the world. He said he didn't want to talk to me about my issues tonight. I just need a shoulder. You know what I'm saying? But he doesn't want to be the shoulder tonight. Right? Nobody's shoulder. Like, that's not what they need. I'm standing back there. And this fight's going on in my head. And I'm like, okay, second song. Got 2 more songs. 1 more song. Okay, God, you got to do something. You got to do something. And I'm super ADD. And I was standing back there. And I was like, okay, I'm that kid. Sometimes it just happens. And in my brain, I'm that kid again. I'm going to tell y'all something. Y'all can't tell anybody. About a month ago, I pulled into Ingalls. And I saw a car that I recognized. The guy that molested me still lives here. And if anything like that's ever happened to you, and you go and have a meeting with a detective, several interviews with detectives, and you have to relive that story and feel that all over again constantly. And you're trying to figure out whether you throw that church under the bus because that church is still here acting like, let's not get into that. But you don't know what the right thing to do is. What do I do? How do I protect the children around here? And how do I protect this church? I don't want to throw this church under the bus because that's where it happened. But I want to protect the children that are there, and you've done everything that you can do, and then you just happen to see pictures of this guy still working with the youth group at the church after you talk to the freaking pastor about it. And you don't know what to do. Right? Because you're like, I got thousands of people that watch my Facebook videos. Why don't I just get on there and tell everybody? And sometimes you feel that way, and then in 5 minutes later, you're like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I really want to do that. How do you protect people? How do you protect children that this guy's still trying to be around? And how do you follow Jesus? And how do you have character about it? How do you have integrity about it? And sometimes you feel like you're in a pressure cooker, and you just want to freaking go away. So I pull in Ingles parking lot, and what looked like his car was in Ingles parking lot. And I was having one of these days. Sometimes I would have just pulled right out of the parking lot and left. Done that. I've seen him in the store and gone down another aisle, whatever. But this time, I went down every aisle in the store looking for him. Everyone. Is he down this one? And I have no idea what I would have done if I would have found him. It would not have been pleasant. Would it have ended well? There was a rage that was inside of me that scared me. When that happens, So then I left, right? Left, went, sat in my car, and I started praying. And I turned on that song, Not Alone. Played it on my phone. Driving down the road with my cell phone to my ear, crying with my hat pulled down low so nobody could see me, acting like I was a tough man. I'm a dude. Hey, Josh, what's going on? Just being a man. We're good. So I'm standing in the back. ADD takes over. What am I going to do? And I pick this up, and it's the Gospel of John in a really artistic cover. Isn't that awesome? And because I'm ADD, I picked it up. I was actually about to try to juggle 3 of these things. I always wondered if I could do that. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. We've heard that. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. If you go over to Colossians, it says that God created the world by the Word that proceeded from His mouth. In Him, by Him, and through Him, all things were made. Nothing was made, and without Him, nothing was made. That was made. Like, okay, Jesus is the beginning, the end. He's everything. There are days when my mind feels dark. There are days that everything around me, no matter how sunshiny it is and wonderful it is, when I should be loving it, there are just days that I feel like a child. I feel like that person in my mind. I don't want to see myself. I don't want to be alone, or sometimes I want to be alone. It's completely unpredictable. Listen to this. And the darkness, I feel like there's darkness that's taken over. And I feel like, Elijah, when he hid under that tree, he's like, God, I'm alone, take me out. And I know that that's not the case. You ever had one of those moments where your brain is telling you something, you know it's not true, but you can't help but believe it? And you're trying to figure out how not to believe what you're telling yourself? Check this out. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. The life was the light of men. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. That's sweet. Now check this out. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Darkness is real. Sin is real. Pain is real. Satan can't have your soul. He sure as heck will try to take your mind. It does us no good to pretend that there's not darkness. It doesn't do us any good to tell people not to bring their darkness into this building because we're a light place. This is about the light. Darkness is real, and it affects all of us. One of the biggest issues that people have with the existence of God is the fact that darkness exists. Somebody asked me last week, how do you know that God exists? I don't believe God exists because of all the bad things that happen in the world. I said, okay, so you believe in wrong. He's like, well, yeah. I said, you believe in bad. Yes. So you believe in good. Yes. So you're telling me God doesn't exist because if he actually existed, then bad stuff wouldn't happen. Well, yeah. So I said, so how does bad exist if good does not exist? How does wrong exist if right doesn't exist? If there's no objective right, if there's no objective good, then there cannot be evil and there cannot be wrong. By experiencing darkness, we can know that there's an objective light. And this says that Jesus is the light of the world, and the darkness tries, but the darkness cannot overcome it. And sometimes it feels dark, and sometimes it feels like the lights are off, and sometimes it feels like you don't know who you are, where you're going, or what's going on, but light always finds a way through the darkness. Always. The question is, how in the world do we turn the light on? Because He's there, right? The question isn't, is Jesus the light who the darkness cannot overcome? That's not the question. The question that we constantly ask ourselves in our mind, maybe I'm alone. But some of you have those doubts and you have those things in your mind and you hear stuff and you say, listen, that's true for them, but that's not true for me. You know what's strange? Is the greatest nights of my life, the greatest days of my life, the greatest experiences of my life always have something to do with telling people about Jesus. This is what God made me to do. It's what I'm called to do. I flippin' love it. When I go and speak at youth things, when I speak here, whatever. It's amazing how quickly the darkness tries to settle in on me after I've seen the light show himself the brightest. Or when Jesus wants to show himself the brightest and that darkness is coming in, and you can feel it creeping into your heart, you can feel it creeping into your mind, and no matter how great things are, you just can't see it. No, life sucks. I suck. It's 15 years ago and it still affects me. It affects my marriage, it affects my relationship, and it's getting further and further apart. But sometimes I'm here, I'm like, listen, these people need to know about Jesus, but I don't want to tell them about Jesus. I want to go lay down and cry somewhere. What's going on? He's the light, and the darkness cannot overcome it. So, when we talk about generosity, right, we talk about the source of our generosity. We talk about the infinite possibilities of our generosity. We talk about the bloodline that we have. We are God's kids. Therefore, this is how we live. But, when does that go from what we do and become who we are? Think a baby just fell. How does that go? When does that go from what we do to who we are? See, we call ourselves Christians. We grew up, a lot of us grew up in a culture, in a situation where Christianity and following Jesus was about what you did. This is what you do, this is what you do not do. You read this, you pray like this, you walk like this, you talk like this, you don't say these words, you don't smoke this, you don't drink this, you don't chew this. And that's what it was, what you do. And so if you do the right things, that meant you were the right person. Right? So it's like, okay, you come into church and we go, this is what a good Christian looks like. So if you do these things, you're a good Christian. Guess what Jesus says? You're not a good Christian. You're not a good person. You can't live up to it. That's what the whole Old Testament was about how bad you needed me. So, this is who you are. Because of who you are, this is what you do. Because of who you are, this is what you can do. And you are who you are because I am who I am. You can walk in the light because I am the light. So I'm sitting back there going, God, what do I do? And I picked this up and he said, you don't have to do anything. It's about who you are. And you're my kid. And because you're my kid, you're a child of the light. And when you're a child of the light, the darkness can't overcome you. So how do you do that? I don't know yet. But here's what I know. Here's what I know. 2,000 years ago, God came in the flesh to earth, and the darkness did everything that it could to overcome the world. Everything it could. Right? Jesus is walking around. There's a blind dude. The Bible says the enemy came to kill and steal and destroy. So, listen, Jesus wasn't just doing miracles to make people go, oh, look how powerful he was. Every time Jesus did a miracle, he was shining a little bit more light in the world. The effects of sin, okay, they're gone. Because every time Jesus showed his power over disease, sickness, something like that, he was showing his power over the darkness. He was showing his power over Satan. He was showing his power over sin and the enemy. So every time he did that, right? Like Satan's like, okay, I won this battle, and Jesus would walk by and go, no. Why? Because the light's here. So Jesus is walking around going, this is what I do. This is the light that I bring. This is what I can change, and I've changed your identity. You're no longer the blind guy. Now you're the dude that can see because Jesus walked by. which is sweet. Right? So, Satan's like, we're going to kill him. Now, here's the weirdest conundrum. Jesus was the Lamb of God who came to be slain for the sins of the world. However, to argue that his murder wasn't sin is insane. So we've got Jesus coming to die, and we have people murdering him. If it wasn't a sin for them to kill him, he wouldn't have said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. What they did was wrong. You think God can't redeem a bad situation in your life? God saved the world using people's sin. God provided the redemption for man through their sin. So the Roman soldier who drove the nail into Jesus' hand, his sin was bought and paid for by Jesus dying. Sweet. So Jesus is on the cross, right? And the darkness is creeping in. Darkness falls on the world. And Satan's over there going, yeah, we did it. He's going to die. He's going to die, right? The demons are all sitting around going, we're going to kill him. We're going to kill him. He's going to die. Freaking sweet. And Satan's like, shh, he's not dead yet. Just shut up. He's not dead yet. Right? So they go up. They're going to break his legs. He's hanging there. Finally, he says, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And he dies. And I would imagine a party broke loose. God's not standing in the way anymore. Jesus isn't standing in the way anymore. Because here's my theory. The disciples didn't understand anything that Jesus said. You remember that? He'd be like, hey, Jesus, when are you going to set up your kingdom? When are you going to set up your kingdom? I would imagine that Satan thought Jesus had come to set up his kingdom too. That's my guess. So Satan's going, we're going to kill him, and he's not going to take over the world. We're going to kill him, and he's not going to be the king of the world. We're going to kill him, he's not going to be the king of the Jews, right? And so they got all these religious people. It's interesting that religious people were the people that killed Jesus. But that's another story for another time. The good ones. The ones with the biggest list who did the best job of following it. Jeans, skirts, and kids all day long. That's what the Pharisees' wives wore. They were awesome, and they got Jesus, and they put him on the cross. And Jesus, like a lamb led to the slaughter, walked up, laid down, put his arms out, and said, do it. Like, hey, listen, Satan, check this out. We're kind of experts in the darkness. I get that. This is Jesus, and he's letting us do that. Don't you think that's suspicious? Well, we just got to kill him. So they put him on a cross. He dies. There's rejoicing. There's darkness. The disciples are hiding. He's won. The darkness has won for 72 hours. They're chilling. They're excited. We've won. Maybe they're sitting there making their plans for how they're going to take over the world. And then Jesus says, the darkness cannot overcome me. And he got up. I would imagine that Roman soldiers weren't the only people chilling around that tomb. You ever thought about that? Paul said we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. It wasn't just the Roman soldiers that got, surprised when Jesus rolled out. Jesus stepped up, rolled away the stone, and said, the darkness will not overcome me. You know what Jesus says about you and about me? Walk in the light. I am the light. How do we do that? How does generosity become our life? In 2 Corinthians 9, when Paul's talking about generosity, he says, give cheerfully, not out of, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember that word. He basically says, don't do it because you feel like you have to. Do it because you want to. And it's interesting that he says that right after he says, hey, by the way, you need to do this. He's like, hey, listen, give abundantly. This is going to be awesome. We've told everybody you're generous. Like, he's writing this letter and he's going, listen, we've told them you're generous. Don't make me look bad. Don't make me look bad. Like, we're going to show up and your gift needs to be extraordinary and it's going to be awesome. By the way, don't do it because you have to. Do it because you want to, but you better do it. How? How do you do that? How do you look at something and go, you have a responsibility as a child of God to obey God. So we have to do this. But how do we do it because we want to do it. Because it's not what we do, it's who we are. When generosity becomes who we are, when being a follower of Christ is who we are and not what we do. So how do we do it? Remember what Joey talked about a minute ago about setting up good habits in our life? It's not just about physical habits. Read my Bible, pray. It's the mental habits. Of every time that thing pops into your head that you know Jesus says is wrong, you say, listen, the darkness does not reside here because the light lives inside of me. But we got to turn on the light. God, I know you're here, but now you've got to have control of my mind. Jesus, I know you bought me with a price, but therefore, I will glorify you in my mind, I will glorify you in my heart, and I will glorify you in my body. And the darkness cannot have me. Let me tell you what's going on in our city right now. This is a city, a town, that is absolutely covered up in the darkness. In obvious ways, in the ways that everybody likes to jump up and down and scream about, and in the ways that nobody wants to talk about. Because the steeples in this town are casting a massive shadow over this city. There are churches that are casting a shadow of darkness over this city because they're not screaming Jesus, they're screaming religion. And they've got 613 rules that everybody's got to follow. That they've added to the Bible and said, this is how you follow Jesus. You know how you follow Jesus? You demand that the darkness leave. You demand, you say, I have the authority as a child of Jesus who got up from the grave to tell you that you will not own me, you will not define me, sin will not hold me, pain will not hold me. Because Jesus will drive it away whether you like it or not. But some of us are addicted to the darkness. We're addicted to the darkness. This is just how I am. This is how you're used to feeling. This is how you want to feel. There are days when you go, listen, this is just me. This is just how I think today. And sometimes this is what I just have to do. Jesus said you are more than conquerors. You are more than conquerors. And the things in your life that cause you not to reach the goals and the vision and the mission that God has set for you, those things in your mind and in your heart that God said, this is what I want you to do, and you go, listen, I can't do that because I've got this going on in my heart and in my mind, and this is just who I am. You're calling Jesus a liar because Jesus said, this is what you will do. This is what you will accomplish. You will do greater things than I have done. And when you say, oh, I can't do that, this is just who I am, you're calling Jesus a liar. And you're letting the darkness control your mind and control your heart. What message are we giving? Are we giving in Christ we are great victims? In Christ we are cheerful victims? In Christ we can act spiritual while we're victims? Isn't that fantastic? I'm so sad today. This is terrible. Work was awful today. You have no idea what my boss made me do today. It was terrible. It was just a terrible day. Listen, when Christianity is about what we do, then circumstances will affect the way we feel. When Christianity is about what we do, then circumstances will affect our generosity. Because circumstances can change what you do, but circumstances can never change who you are. If we believe that Jesus created the universe in him, through him, by him, everything was made, if he made it, he's bought you, you are his, you bear the identity of Jesus Christ, then you're saying what he made and what he controls has an effect on his identity. Isn't it amazing how quickly we become heretics? Well, Jesus is stronger than all of them. And I'm Jesus' kid. That means when God looks at me, he sees Jesus. Great so far. But I can't obey Jesus because I'm just not strong enough. Time out. You don't earn salvation. Nothing you can do to be good enough for Jesus. Nothing. People have asked me, how do I know I've been good enough to go to heaven? Easy. You'll never be good enough to go to heaven. It's the easiest question I've ever been asked. You can't. So how do I get to heaven? You tell Jesus that your identity isn't good enough and you need his. Hey, Jesus, I can't do it. I really need you. I'm a sinner. I've got darkness inside of me. I need you to drive it out. You know, when Joey uses that big word, what's the big word you were using earlier, bro? Sanctification. Sanctification. You go, what is sanctification? What does that mean? That means you let Jesus drive a little more darkness out of you every day. That means you let Jesus put more of him on you every day. That means he changes your DNA a little more every day. So listen, he has put his name on you. He has put his identity on you. But he just fills you up with a little more Jesus every day, where generosity becomes less about what you do, and it just becomes like this overflow of who you are. So it's no longer, well, this is going to be difficult. Let's see if I can muster up enough faith to obey Jesus this week. It's been a rough week. And it just becomes, yeah, I'm obeying Jesus. Duh. And I want to get there. I want to get there to where every single morning I wake up and no matter what anybody says or what anybody does, I'm like, no, I am a child of the King. I don't want to have these battles for the rest of my life. I don't want to have these battles where I'm sitting back there going, no, I'm a child of the King, I'm a child of the King, I'm a child of the King. I want to get to the place where I just walk around going, I'm God's kid. So darkness, you got to run. You got to run. You know where our church is headed? We've come through some times where we've let circumstances define our church. We've let other people's opinions define our church. Some of us have kind of, as a group, we've kind of said, okay, this is who we are. We're the outcasts. People don't like the way we do things. Forget that mess. You know who we are? We're a family of disciples and followers of Jesus Christ who God has called to mission. And we walk in that. That's who we are. And every week, and every day, as a family, we're going to take more of the DNA of Jesus and reflect it to our world. And we're going to watch Jesus chase the darkness away. If we believe that verse, it says the darkness cannot overthrow it, then we believe that the only reason darkness ever overthrows anything is because Christians aren't doing their job. If God is who he says he is, then he's not the problem, we are. When I'm having a bad day, it's because there's something wrong with my mind. It's not because something is too strong. It may be too strong for me, but it ain't too strong for my Jesus. So, if it's too strong for me that day and I feel like hiding under the covers, it's because there's something wrong with my mind. Because I've not brought my mind into subjection about what Jesus says about himself and what Jesus says about me. And that's got to change. Y'all stand up with me for a second. Your story may look different than mine. What darkness looks like in your mind, when Satan tries to take your mind, it may look different. It may look like a sin problem. It may be something that you're like, listen, this is just, the temptation's too hard for me, and Jesus is just going to have to understand that. It may be a doubt problem. It may be an identity problem. It may be you can't believe that there's anything of value about you. It may be that when I talk about generosity up here, and when we do it as a church, you're the exception. Not because you don't want to give, but you don't think you have anything to offer. But Jesus says he's strong enough that he will overthrow the darkness in your heart and in your mind. But we have to claim it and say, listen, the light is my identity. I don't identify with the darkness. No more of this, it's just the way I think, it's just the way I do. When you say it's just the way something is, you are identifying yourself with the darkness and telling Jesus he's not big enough to take over your life. When I identify with the darkness, when I say I am the way I am because of what happened to me, I'm saying that Jesus isn't big enough to control me and give me my identity. And I can't do it anymore. I don't have to do it. I've got to let him give me my identity. The closer we get to the person of Jesus Christ, the closer we draw. What Joey was talking about those habits, you know why those are so important? Because sometimes we're not going to feel like it, and the only way we're going to do it is if we've set up those patterns and said, Jesus, you're important enough for me to turn off the TV. You're important enough for me to get up 30 minutes earlier. You are important enough that no matter what happens in my life, you are going to be my priority. Until He is the priority of our heart and of our mind, He's not going to be able to control our heart or our mind. We love to meditate on the pain. We love to meditate on the anger. Some of us just have something, somebody offends us, and then we just let it grow and grow and grow, and then we want to talk about it for 3 months. And Jesus says, I am strong enough to take that from you and let it go, but you have to let me be your identity. I love you guys. Let's pray. Jesus, God, thank you for who you are. God, there's these Romans 7 moments that happens that are so confusing sometimes. Where we go, Jesus, this is what I know, this is what I am supposed to do, but this isn't what I don't do. How do I do it? And God, I pray that you will break away the chains and the darkness and the oppression that so often tries to take over my mind and my heart and so many of the minds and hearts that are represented in this room, God. And I pray that we will be a people who are more concerned with who you are than with who we are. I pray that 1212 will be a family of people that we don't get identified by our creeds. We don't get identified by our music, our worship styles, the way we dress, what we say. But I pray that when people say 1212, people automatically think about Jesus. That is a place that represents the person of Jesus Christ because they were broken and they're not anymore. They were weak and they're not anymore. They were hurting and they're not anymore. They used to be consumed with themselves, and now they're consumed with Jesus and loving other people. God, I pray that your identity will shine through this place. We love you, Jesus. Amen.